busy due to international summits and meetings like the Prime Minister's current trip to Mexico.
The Prime Minister is busy, looking busy, flying around, grip and grin, pretending to do a lot while doing very little.
So what will the next budget tell us about Canada's spending habits? What might come from this brief trade mission to Mexico? I'm Rosemary Barton, here to break it down tonight. Chantal Hébert, Andrew Coyne, Althea Raj. Andrew, let's start with you. We've got a date now, perhaps a little bit later for the budget than we anticipated on Monday, pushing into November. But all those things that I mentioned there are factors that are making it difficult to come up with, I guess, that's what the government says, a budget for right now. What do you make of where they have landed on the date?
Well, it may also be because they're struggling to make the numbers add up. Look, the situation is deteriorating. This time, the last budget, which was 18 months ago, the budget for this year was supposed to be budget deficit for this year was supposed to be $39 billion. By the last spring Liberal platform, it was $62 billion. The CD Howe Institute in July said it's $92 billion, but the economy shrunk since then. It shrunk certainly 3 months in a row, maybe 6 months. So we could be looking at a number over $100 billion for all we know by this point. So we've had that message, that letter from the finance minister to his colleagues saying you've got to cut spending by 15% over 3 years, but then we find out that doesn't apply to about 2/3 of federal spending. When the CD Howe Institute looked at the numbers, they said that adds up to about a $22 billion cut over 3 years from a budget of over $500 billion. With a deficit of $100 billion, with all of the defense spending coming down the road in years to come, I don't think we're close to coming to grips with the fiscal situation. The Prime Minister said the other day that they're still going to just achieve cuts in the federal payroll from attrition. I suspect that they're punting a bit. I think they're going to try to put off the really hard work until after the next election, if then.
But part of why Mark Carney is down in Mexico is not just, to make sure the relationship is good, but it's also because obviously the numbers are in part that way because of what has happened with the tariff war, and in part because, as Andrew points out, some of the big spending promises the government made. Is that something you think, Chantal, that Canadians are going to buy, that as Mark Carney says, we are in the worst economic crisis of our time?
I don't know if they're going to buy that we are in the worst economic crisis of our time, but they will certainly buy the fact that we are in the least predictable and least positive juncture in a long, long time. Sure. And in a situation where we lived through the 90s and the deficit wall then, and Paul Martin doing what he had to do. But at that point, we mostly had control over what we were doing. Other things were stable. We didn't have this tariff issue. We kind of knew where all the marks were. This isn't the case. There is a lot of things we don't know. We don't even know if in 6 months the U.S. will still want to renegotiate CUSMA, or just say we don't really care about this deal anymore unless you sign up for more concessions that will cost. But I agree with Andrew, the economy is deteriorating fast. Unemployment is going up quickly, and that's not going to stop. And I'm starting to think that maybe in hindsight, the government regrets not having brought in a quickie budget last June.
Yeah.
Rather than have this situation, especially since last June, no opposition party, including the Conservatives, would have felt like bringing down the government. But the more the weeks go on and the situation deteriorates, the more that temptation will be there. I'm not predicting an election on that basis, but still, it becomes more complicated. Then the other question the Liberals have to ask themselves is, if it's going to get worse, do we want to survive the budget and delay it till we're weaker in an election? Those are all questions to which I don't have answers, but they're all facing the government at this point.
And I mean, the other question they could be asking themselves, Althea, is there any promise or thing we should be scaling back here because we're in such dire straits? And it doesn't seem that is a consideration at this point, but you have to wonder why that's not also on the table.
Well, it seems like climate change has definitely taken a back seat, I would say. It's interesting that Chantal mentions like maybe the Liberals would want to have an election right now, because that is certainly the sentiment among the opposition, i.e. nobody wants to vote for this budget because everybody fears the sticker shock on the size of the deficit. And there seems to be poison pills for every opposition party in this budget, either too much spending or too many cuts, or cuts that are that we're told will happen later, to Andrew's point. I find that very interesting. The other point I think that's worth mentioning, I agree with everything my colleagues have said so far, but that the prescriptions that Mark Carney has outlined for this moment in time are prescriptions that he talks about in his book, Values, which is from 2021. And a lot of these prescriptions sound pretty similar to Canadians if they paid attention to what Justin Trudeau was saying, especially in the early part of his mandate. It's just that the price tags are a lot bigger now. So I think at some point the government is going to have to explain why it thinks it can succeed with similar policies, at least similar philosophically intuited policies. I'm thinking of like the housing spend, for example, where Justin Trudeau failed. That, I think, is a reason why perhaps not just the opposition, but the Liberals might start thinking about going now rather than going in the spring on the spring budget.
Andrew, how long will people, do you think, give the Prime Minister to try and turn things around? It hasn't been very long, to be fair. No. And, you would at least get a budget to sort of see, I think Canadians would give him a budget to sort of see where are things at. Can he make some improvements here with his economic vision?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how many months or years people will give him. I think, as you say, they've given him the benefit of the doubt until now, probably rightly so. The budget will certainly be a reckoning point. I think with these things, there has to be a sense that you're getting your arms around the problem, that you're making progress against it, that you know what you're doing. If you look like events are getting away from you, that you're running on the spot to catch up, then people can smell that. They can smell when a government is losing confidence and competence in the face of large problems. So that's the absolute lowest bar that they have to get over in this budget, is look like they've actually grasp the size of the problem and have a plan to get forward towards it. As I say, I doubt whether they're going to execute the whole of the plan at this point, because the spending cuts at this point, to me, look like they're going to have to be a lot deeper than what they're talking about. We are going to have to, for example, to start talking about a reform of, cuts to, transfers to the provinces and transfers to individuals. You cannot wall off such enormous parts of the budget from any cuts when you're engaged in this kind of exercise. The other thing they have to be thinking about is, how do we start grappling with the growth problem in this country? You know, it really is true in the long run that if you want to get out of your fiscal hole, you have to get faster growth. It doesn't solve things in the short run, but in the long run, that's absolutely key to restoring fiscal health to this country.
Okay, about 30 seconds, Chantal.
Yes, at this point, the benefit of the doubt is in part due to Mark Carney, but in part because voters are saying they're not seeing that the alternative would do better. So Mr. Poilievre basically has the next few months to convince more Canadians that he could handle all of these issues in a more efficient way than Mark Carney. And that, so far, has not happened.
Well, and you wonder if you are in an economic crisis, again, is there an advantage there for the current Prime Minister? Maybe not, but there might be as well. Okay, we're going to leave this part here. When we come back, we'll take a look at the departure of Chrystia Freeland from Cabinet.